Good afternoon, classmates, staff, and alumni. My name is Katya Kruger from the grade 12 graduating class of 2021. Notre Dame is on the traditional lands referred to as Treaty 4 territory, the original lands of the Cree, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. I am excited to host this special presentation today in celebration of International Women's Day, a day in which we have the opportunity to celebrate the women of Notre Dame. Today, we have the honor of listening to Tanya Koshowski, who is a Hound from the class of 1992. She is the founder of Tanya K Leadership Consulting. Tanya is an authentic and collaborative leader who has built her life's work around her education, experience, purpose, and passion for empowering people, organizations, and communities to be the best they can be so they can create good in the world. Tanya is also executive director of Brown Bagging for Calgary's Kids, where she and her team inspires a city of people to take meaningful action by feeding and caring for kids who would otherwise go hungry. She has proudly led the successful and impactful organization for the past 9 years. As an influential community leader across Alberta and Canada, she knows what it takes to practice the tactical and caring side of leadership. Welcome, Tanya. Take it away.
Excellent. Thanks, Katya. So great. Katya, I have a question for you to start us off. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
All right. So I've heard that as your hockey team, you have a leadership team with your hockey team, which I love. Would love to learn more about that. So my question for you is, what does being a leader mean to you?
Okay. For me, being a leader is about practicing what you preach. I think that it's really important to remember that everyone is equal. And so leadership does not put me above others. It gives me a responsibility to hold myself accountable to the expectations I have for the rest of my teammates. So that's
wow.
the most important thing to me.
That's awesome. Thanks, Katya, for sharing that with me and with everybody else who's listening. So good job. That's great. Well, thank you guys. I am honored to hang out with you all over lunch and on International Women's Day. But I have to be honest that I'd much rather be in person, as most of our world would rather these days. And also, I kind of wish it was a Saturday. So I don't know if grilled cheese and tomato soup is still a tradition on Saturdays in Wilcox, but that was definitely the tradition for myself. And it is one of those comfort foods for myself. And also I have a 4-year hound who graduated in 2016. So Jared, also his favorite comfort food is tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. Either way, it's not Saturday and we are on Zoom, so we're going to make the most of it. So like you girls are sitting right now in those very seats, that's a place where amongst the sports and amongst school and friends and all those pieces that I started to become curious about leadership. What does it mean to be a leader? How the heck do I do that? So I was a 2nd-year hound given the opportunity to be an assistant house leader, which in my time was a little bit rare, that it wasn't sort of as a 2nd-year student, you were sort of given that opportunity or that responsibility. But I was given that responsibility to lead and guide and care for the girls in my dorm. But I kind of would say I felt like a kid myself. I didn't know how to do that. What did that mean? How was I? It wasn't a popularity contest. It was about guiding and leading all the realities of what dorm life and being in Wilcox and Notre Dame is about. So I know my friends and my peers were also in that same position. We were kind of wondering, how do we do this so that we can be the best leaders we can? We have this opportunity to help influence and guide and inspire the girls in our dorm. So we marched down the Edith Hall hallway to Brenda Lewis, who was our house parent at the time, and presented to her some ideas and said, you know, Brenda, can we together as leaders, or as house leaders, can we start doing some learning and some research and figure out some ways we can present to the other house leaders so we can show up and really be great leaders for what this responsibility we had been given. So we took some topics and did some research and we presented them back to the other house leaders and really made a huge impact on how we as leaders in that time were able to make an impact. And that's really where this journey started for me. I started to notice that leadership wasn't about this top-down hierarchical demand and control approach to leadership. It was about being real, about caring for each other. What about connection, that you knew people? And it was about trust and about respect. And how did you do that with the people on your team or the people in your dorm or any context that's real for any of you? So what became real for me is that no matter how I performed on the basketball court or on the rugby field or on an algebra test, I was still held capable. I was trusted and I was cared for. And I remember a little bit of a story. So algebra wasn't my strength. I remember failing a test in algebra and then having to go into the dorm that night and deal with a serious situation and still held capable. And I was trusted to do that and show up in that way of leadership that I was given the responsibility to. So I was sort of seen as this whole person, no matter where there was maybe some failures or some things I wasn't that good at or I was struggling with, I was still held with that level of capability and strength. So that approach of leadership, being seen as that whole person, stuck with me from my days at Notre Dame and has stuck with me through all my life's journey and the work that I've done in my career. So I wanted to really start to explore what that meant. How do I get clear on who I am or what I value, what energizes me, what drains me, what gives me that feeling, that gut feeling in my stomach, that nervous pit in my stomach, or makes my heart flutter? What frustrates me, what gives me joy, what makes me angry, what gives me elation, what's all those things. I really started to get curious on who I was, what I was good at, and what I wasn't good at. And it was okay that I wasn't good at things. Could see my strengths and I could see the strengths of other people around me. I did that then, and I still do that now. And what became really clear for me was that it was about being real, and it was about bringing people together. And when we brought people together, it was about solving a problem or filling a gap or seizing an opportunity. And in that, I wanted to be part of making a difference in the world and inspiring. And I wanted to do that in a practice of leadership that was about encouraging people so they feel empowered to be their best selves. And now when I say that, and I'm going to share a little bit about what I get to do for work. But when I say that, that's no matter whatever context it is. If it's on your soccer team or your hockey team or in the dorm or with friends or in business or in work, whatever it is, it doesn't just have to be those just causes, but it was about bringing people together and empowering them to be their best selves. So I do have the opportunity to get to do that work at an organization that I lead, Brown Bagging for Calgary's Kids, as Katya mentioned. So a little bit about my work there is I've been involved with the organization for 18 years, then came on staff 11 years ago and have led the organization for the last 9 years. And Brown Bagging has grown exponentially in that time. We are now feeding about 6,000 hungry kids every day in Calgary that would otherwise go to school without their lunch, like you guys are eating now. But what became real for me was it was about bringing people together so that we could feed those kids, and giving kids that food gives them the sustenance to them do their math, do their reading, go and have the energy to play, build self-esteem, all those things that kids need. And it was giving those kids, encouraging them through the act of food that gave them the opportunity, gives them the opportunity to be the best they can be. But that ripple effect also goes through the team of people that I lead. So my staff team is the same thing. I lead with this practice of leadership that it's about encouraging them to be empowered to be their best, to know their strengths so they can shine and grow. Also be willing to take some risks and make some mistakes and maybe learn and grow and do that together in a safe place. And then the continued ripple effect is we have hundreds of volunteers a week that help us do this work. And giving volunteers the opportunity as well to feel encouraged and get to do what they want to do and what the things that matter to them also is a huge part of the success that Brown Bagging has experienced. And I will say, very proud and humble, and we'll celebrate this on International Women's Day, that Brown Bagging is one of the top 5% of successful, impactful charities across Canada right now. And the reason I do believe is yes, the work we do is important and is needed and is so impactful for these kids, but it's also how we do it. We do practice this style of leadership that is about caring and connection and being real with people. So I do believe that we are better together, and it is about bringing people together to do great things. And when you do that, you have a positive impact and you can really do things with really great purpose. And when you have purpose and you've got people together, you know your strengths, you know your values, you believe in connection and caring. And I do believe then you're truly unstoppable when you have that community of people on a real clear purpose. So sometimes the argument can be that it can't have that type of leadership in some of the serious things we do. It's a project or a team, when it's a playoff, or it's in the work environment, or it's in a boardroom, whatever that might be, that you can't bring gratitude or empathy or caring into your leadership. What's really interesting to me is there's really great research about emotional intelligence. And that's what we're talking about here. As leaders, how do we build our emotional intelligence to learn about ourselves so we can be impactful and do what matters and create impact for the people around us? Because even though the emotional intelligence is more important than your IQ, you can have really brilliant, great, amazing things with your IQ that you want to do, really successful, great things. But if you can't relate to people or guide and empower people or give people a place even to be seen and heard and valued, or even, I love how Katya said, talking about it doesn't need to be about her. She doesn't sort of need to be in that, to be the leader in the front and shining her light only. It's so you keep your ego in check. How do you listen as a leader? Those are emotional intelligence things that when we practice that, we can be more impactful in the work, no matter what context that we're in. And I'll tell you, this hasn't always been easy and successful. There have been struggles. I have experienced some of these failures. And when I look at the root causes of some of the struggles and the failures that I've experienced as a leader, it usually comes down to the fact of how are we relating and how are we connecting and how are we building trust very intentionally in the work that we're doing. So this is a really impactful, and it is the changing way we need to think about leadership in our world. There is power of a purposeful and impactful community of people when they're working in their strengths and their passions. So what does that mean for you? My invitation to female hounds and anybody on the call is to get curious, to pay attention to yourself. What is that nervous pit in your stomach? What is that fluttering in your heart? What gives you those joyful, elated feelings? What really frustrates you? What energizes you? What do you value? Where are your strengths? And what can you try and succeed in? And what can you try and maybe have a failure in, and then try again, to have the courage to be you? So that's my one invitation for you. The second is a challenge for you, is can you be very intentional every day to do one intentional act around this type of leadership? And if that's showing up on your team or in your dorm or on TikTok or whatever that might be, how can you very intentionally create connection in what you're in those platforms, show gratitude, show empathy? Can you simply care for somebody as an intentional act of leadership? Maybe even right now when the world is kind of in a heavy place, and I know there's been so many struggles, can you choose some optimism over some negativity? So as we close up here, my invitation and challenge for you as female hounds on International Women's Day is what? Is to pay attention to those feelings you have inside you, to get clear on who you are, what your strengths and passions and what matters to you. And two, to really take intentional action every day around these things. That these are the principles of leadership we all have the opportunity to step into. If you're at Notre Dame for like a few more months, or if you're at Notre Dame for a few more years, you are all leaders. You all have the opportunity, even the responsibility, to make a difference every day, to intentionally choose that. I do believe it is in each of you to have the confidence and the courage to be the best female leaders a hound can be. So thank you so much for your time and for listening. And I would love to have any conversation or open up to any questions. I hear noise.
You. Okay, where are we here? Oh, video. Okay, start video. There you are. Oh. Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay, so my name's Grace Poland. I'm from Wilcox, Saskatchewan. I'm a 4-year hound.
Awesome.
My question is, when you find yourself kind of struggling or just emotionally drained, how do you motivate yourself to still practice your leadership skills when you're in those hard times?
Yeah, great question. You know what? I think what I've learned, and sometimes successfully and sometimes it takes me a little bit, is that I need to find that space to ground myself. So for me, when things are really struggling and there's lots of stress and chaos around, even what the world is in is right now, they're hard times for everybody. For me, it's making sure I get quiet. I'm a runner, so I love going for a run. I love listening to things that kind of help motivate me. I also will do some meditation and journaling just to kind of really calm myself and get grounded and just focus. Sometimes it's 3 deep breaths. Put my feet on the ground and just take those 3 breaths and just be really present to what's happening, because I can't control all those other things going on around. We know that, but I can control myself. So when there's a struggle, I really just focus on getting present and calm and doing the things that really make me feel good and feel more grounded.
Mute. Yep, you're good.
Hi, Tanya. I'm Bryn McLean from Wilcox, Saskatchewan, and I'm a 4-year hound. So my question for you is what women had a large impact on you and influenced you to do what you do?
Great question. Bryn, is Connor your brother?
Yes, yes.
All right. We'll say hi to Connor. So Bryn, I would say that some of the female influences that I have had, I would say sort of more locally, was I led some programming at a sports and recreation center years ago. And one of the leaders there was the CEO of the organization. She was really active and engaged as a leader and showed some of that empathy and care, even when we had through some struggles, and really always had my back when we ran into those situations. So her name is Sue. So she would be one of the influential leaders that I got to work under and learn from, especially when going through some tough times. And then the other one I would say, sort of a little bit more in the guru world out there, is Brene Brown is a big influencer for me. So she's got some brilliant work, and she's an empathy shame researcher, and some brilliant work on sort of the practice of being imperfect, and it's okay to be imperfect. So she's kind of a little bit more of a guru outside of that for me, that is an influencer.
Yeah, it is.
Go for it.
Hello, my name is Kennedy Nolan. I'm a 3-year hound from Rolla, Saskatchewan. And my one question for you is, what one piece of advice would you give your teenage self?
Oh, I think I still am a teenager sometimes. I'd like to be back to those days. Piece of advice that I would give my teenage self would be to have more courage to follow my thoughts and my hearts and my dreams. And in that courage, be more confident. Yeah, that's what I would say to my teenage self.
Okay. So guessing yourself. Yep.
So thank you, Tanya, for taking the time to join us today on International Women's Day and to share your knowledge about leadership and how we as Hounds can be the best leaders we can be. As a gift of appreciation, we wish to send you a Notre Dame legacy book. Lastly, I encourage everyone to follow the She's a Hound campaign, which celebrates the women of Notre Dame through sharing stories for female hounds, including Tanya's, and raising support for current and future female hounds.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me and having me part of this really great International Women's Day and get to share a little bit of the story and inspire those female hounds as much as we can.
Awesome. Hey, that's it. Thank you, Tanya. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, you too, guys. Take care.